Have you ever stopped to wonder how the United States became the global superpower? It's a fascinating story, and believe me, it didn't happen by accident. So let's break down how it all went down.
To get our heads around this, let's play a quick game. First up, which country has the world's biggest economy? We're talking a GDP of over $20 trillion.
Okay, next question. How about military power? Which nation has the most powerful, most technologically advanced military machine on Earth? And let's look beyond just money and military. Think about brain power and athletic skill. Which single country has racked up more Nobel Prizes and more Olympic medals than any other?
Yeah, you probably saw this coming. The answer to all of those is, of course, the United States. But that's just the what. The real story, the part that's truly mind-blowing, is the how. How did one country get to be so dominant in so many different areas?
Okay, check out this chart. It gives us some wild historical perspective. For almost 2,000 years, the world's economic heavyweights were India and China. But then, look at that huge spike after the 1900s. That, right there, is the USA. So what on earth happened? Let's get into it.
Every great structure needs a solid foundation, right? Well, for America, that foundation was land. Just a massive, resource-rich territory that set the stage for everything that was to come.
And this expansion? It happened at lightning speed. I mean, think about it. After declaring independence in 1776, the nation just kept getting bigger. Texas decided to join up in 1836. Then you have these huge strategic moves, like buying Alaska from Russia in 1867, and even annexing Hawaii in 1898. Now look at this number, $7.2 million. That is all the U.S. paid for the gigantic territory of Alaska. It's now seen as one of the greatest bargains in history, giving the country not just a treasure trove of natural resources, but a super important strategic position on the globe.
So you have to understand, this growth was, well, it was a mixed bag. On one hand, you had states that chose to join the Union, seeking democracy and protection. But on the other hand, the U.S. also acted a lot like the old colonial powers, making strategic land buys and, yes, even militarily annexing territories like Hawaii and Puerto Rico.
Okay, so you've got the land. What's next? You need an economic engine to make it all run. You need money. So how did the U.S. build an economy powerful enough to take over the world stage?
Well, a huge part of the answer lies in the world wars. For Europe, they were an absolute catastrophe. Economies were shattered, cities were flattened. But for the US, it was a completely different story. The fighting wasn't on American soil, so the country became the factory for the Allies, selling weapons and supplies. While other economies were collapsing, America's was booming.
And all that economic power led to this moment in 1944, a moment that basically changed global finance forever. With Europe's economies in ruins, 44 allied countries got together and made a huge decision. They would all peg their currencies to the stable US dollar. Just like that, the dollar became the world's reserve currency, the foundation of the entire international financial system.
So you've got the land, you've got the money. What's the third pillar of power? You guessed it, military might. This became the tool the U.S. used to project its influence into every corner of the planet.
And the main stage for flexing this new military muscle was the Cold War. Now, this wasn't a war with traditional front lines. It was more like a tense global chess match, an ideological showdown between American capitalism and Soviet communism, a fight over how the world should be run.
So if they weren't fighting on battlefields, how was this war fought? Well, a lot of it happened in the shadows. The U.S. got really good at funding opposition groups, helping to topple governments it didn't like, fighting proxy wars in smaller countries, and even carrying out covert assassinations against figures like Che Guevara. And here's the pretty startling example from our source material. There was a secret CIA program called Operation Cyclone. Through this program, the U.S. literally funded and armed Taliban fighters in Afghanistan. The goal? To stop the Soviet Union from gaining influence there. And what's the result of all that? A military footprint that is just massive. Today, the United States has more than 800 military bases in over 70 countries. That is a level of global reach that no other nation in history has ever had.
But this story isn't just about power politics and military might. There was another crucial ingredient, an internal X factor that acted like a giant magnet for the best and brightest minds in the world.
I mean, just think about some of these names. Albert Einstein from Germany, Elon Musk from South Africa, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella and astronaut Kalpana Chawla from India. For decades, America created an environment where innovators from all over the planet could come, thrive, and do incredible work, constantly pushing the nation forward.
So, we've laid out the building blocks: land, money, military, and talent. But here's where our source material asks us to pause and consider a really tough question. What's the price of all this power for the average person actually living in the superpower?
This chart, wow. It shows one of the biggest internal struggles the country faces. The U.S. has some of the most extreme wealth inequality among developed nations. Just look at this. A staggering 42.5% of all the wealth belongs to just the top 1%. That leaves everyone else, the other 99%, to share what's left.
And that inequality, it's not just a number on a chart. It hits home, literally. For millions, the classic American dream of owning your own home is still just a dream. The home ownership rate is only around 65.8%, which means more than a third of Americans don't own the place they live in.
And this is where things get really interesting. The source material puts the U.S. side by side with the Nordic countries, and what you see is a clear contrast. The U.S. is the undisputed superpower, no question. But countries like Denmark or Norway, which don't even try to be superpowers, consistently rank way higher when it comes to things like human development and the overall well-being of their citizens.
And that brings us to the final, really provocative question posed by our source. What should a nation's ultimate goal be? Should it be to achieve the status and power of a global superpower? Or should it be to focus its energy and resources on improving the daily lives of its own people? It's a huge question and one that's definitely worth thinking about.